Rita can get in and join in with us. All right, here we go. Let's call to order the Mason City Council meeting for February 1st, 2021. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Whipple,
Present from Mason, Michigan.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Present from Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Clark,
From my bunker on Oak Street in Mason.
Councilmember Josha,
Here from Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Ferris,
Here, Mason, Michigan.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Here from Mason.
and Councilmember Vogel. We have a quorum.
All right, if you would, all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation led by Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For tonight's invocation and in honor of Black History Month, I would like to share a poem entitled I Dream a World by Langston Hughes, and then conclude with a brief prayer. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. Let us pray. Lord, empower us to give life to these words and make this dream a reality. Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Next, we have public comment. I see two names on the board here that would be public that might wish to speak. So Tom H. and Jason Ferguson, could we unmute them? And would either of you gentlemen wish to speak? Are they unmuted?
We aren't able to unmute them. They have to unmute themselves. We did ask them to unmute.
Tom, I see Tom H is unmuted. Did you wish to speak, Tom?
Nope, I am just here to listen. I appreciate it very much.
No problem. Thank you. And Jason doesn't even look like he's got audio. All right. Hearing no one who wishes to speak and seeing no one who appears to be interested in speaking, we will move on from public comment to the consent calendar. Would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DeRosa.
I move the approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second,
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
yes.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel,
Councilmember Vogel is not present in the meeting.
Mayor Whipple.
Yes.
I would have said yes. So
The
weird.
vote on that would be 6-0 in favor. I just want to point out that our rules that we just passed the last meeting say that in order to participate in a remote meeting, you have to have audio and video capability. I mean, that's just the rules. So to read it technically, unless she can come up with some audio or video, excuse me, would not be part of this meeting. Which is all that much more motivation for us to get back in person. Unfinished business. See none. Under new business, we have ordinance 233, which is an introduction and first reading to amend Chapter 2 Administration, Article 3 Officers and Employees, Division 3 Code of Ethics. Just for background, the Board of Ethics some time ago requested that the council take a look at the Code of Ethics to deal with some operational issues that they were having and how to interpret things and what they were allowed to do, what they weren't allowed to do. And so we had an ad hoc committee of myself, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, and Councilmember Schaefer. We reviewed some changes to the ordinance, drafted that up, went to the Board of Ethics, had them review it, met with them, went back, made more changes, met with the Board of Ethics again, made a few more changes during that meeting, and the document you see before you is the final version of what the ad hoc committee has come up with in collaboration with the Board of Ethics. So would someone like to make a motion for first reading and adoption, or excuse me, introduction?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move the first reading and introduction of ordinance 233.
Second the motion.
Been moved by Derosha, seconded by Brown for introduction and first reading of ordinance 233. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to thank everybody who was involved in doing this, the ad hoc committee and Tom Hitch and City Manager Stewart and the ethics committee. I think this looks great. You guys put a lot of work into it, I can tell. Well done on all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
was this, when you got together, did you cross-reference this with the charter or any other existing ordinances? Because as I went through the charter, looking for some things for a later discussion, I found references in a couple of places, I haven't gotten all the way through, that reference things that are in the ethics ordinance. And I'm wondering why we're duplicating in an ordinance something that's in the charter.
What specifically are you talking about?
Let's see if I can find it. The financial interest prohibited. There's a whole section on that, section 5.10. In the charter is one. And there were a couple of others, but I don't want to belabor the point my question was just if it had been cross-referenced with the charter and other existing ordinances.
Well, this section of the code has existed for 20 years or so. And the changes that were made were really nothing content-wise with the code. It was almost all process. And Jerry or Marlon, please jump in here if you hear me say something inaccurate or you need to add to it. But so I know that this ordinance, when it was originally adopted, and I believe you were there as well, Councilmember Clark, there was a lot of review of the charter and ordinances and state law to get us to the document we had. But the changes that we're proposing in this amendment are almost all process related. So we're not really changing content.
Well, I also, there are some references in the proposed document that reference city employees. So if that's the case, then I wondered if union officials had also reviewed this document Some of the strikes under conflicts of interest. There, it says if you're a sworn police officer, you can't hold liquor license, but as you well know, that I think it was the Fleming-Lawrence rule changed that to where there are exceptions. Those should be noted. Because the way that the ordinance is written, it's carte blanche, but there are state rules that allow it. And it's actually 436.1523, section 523, paragraph 1 and 2 of the liquor license rules.
But that doesn't, to my knowledge, preclude us from having a more strict rule, and that's what this is. This is simply a more strict rule that says you can't do it. And the attorney has reviewed this. That part of the code, that part of the ordinance has been in it since the beginning. We didn't change anything in that section, so.
Laws have changed, so that does, I don't know why we wouldn't change with them.
Because we're more strict.
Also in section 2-104, paragraph 6D. I read that and read it. That's confusing. I think that needs to be cleaned up and clarified. A couple other ones. And then in 2.2-106, paragraph 2, I was questioning at the bottom where it says if the city council shall not vote, should that be a does not vote? Shall is a term that says they absolutely will. Does not indicates that they either did or didn't.
I will not disagree that may not be the best grammar, but again, this is not a section of the code that we even looked at. So if you want to make a change, make a motion. We've got a proposal that's before the council here, but that's not a section that we even looked at in our review, because that has nothing to do with the issues that were brought up. But basically that sentence just says if the council doesn't vote on confirmation, the mayor's nominations will be confirmed automatically. Hi, Rita. Rita has joined.
And then I had a question under, I lose track of where it is because of all the strikes. Same section, 2-106. Looks like, I don't know. Under advisory opinions, where there's a section that's underlined, it says a request for an advisory opinion shall be submitted to the clerk on a form approved. And as I read that section, does that mean that a complaint can be filed anonymously?
No, complaints cannot be filed anonymously, but advisory opinions can be requested. Advisory opinions can only be requested by people who are city officials as defined by the code. Any other thing that goes to the Board of Ethics would be considered a complaint.
Okay, those are the only questions I had.
Any other discussion? I did want to point out, as is the normal mode of operation in any big writing exercise, I opened this thing up to look at it and immediately looked at a place where what I had typed was wrong. I made a mistake in a citation. So I want to direct you all to section 2-104 D, conflicts of interest 3. In that section, there's a reference to section 2-104 6D1. Well, section 2-104 6D1 does not exist. but section 2104D6D1 does exist, and that's what it should say. I consider that a typographical error, but if the council is not amenable to simply accepting that as a correction to the text of this that's non-consequential, then I would need a motion to amend it. But it is an incorrect citation the way it's written. It needs to be 104D6D1.
Well, if it's not correct, then I guess I'd move that you correct it.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion to amend.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to amend the proposed ordinance by correcting section 2104D3 to change the citation that reads 2104-6D1 to read 2104D6D1. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris,
yes,
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel. You're muted.
You're muted.
Can you talk on the phone? Oh,
Can you talk on your phone, Rita, while you're on the computer?
That would be a yes, Sarah.
Can you get on video? I will accept a raised hand for a vote if you want to do that, Rita. But you do need to have audio connection. We need to be able to talk to you two ways.
Councilmember Vogel, can you at least raise your hand? Is that a yes? Okay. Mayor Whipple.
Yes. We could call that 7 yeses and 0 nos. The motion to amend is approved. Now we're back to the amended main motion. Is there any other discussion on ordinance 233, introduction and first reading?
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, I don't think I was called on that vote.
I am sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, I did not call you.
I was a yes as well.
Thank you.
Now it's 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would move that we amend section 2-104D1 under conflicts of interest to include language that states pursuant to Michigan Liquor Control Commission Rule 436.1523, section 523, paragraphs 1 and 2.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to change section 2104D1. I guess I'm not sure on the specific change of what we're striking and what we're adding. But it sounds like we're going to make changes to make this match state law.
Yes. You could say it could probably be as simple, I mean, you're the master of language. Michigan Liquor Control Commission something pursuant to, and cite the rules 436.1523, section 523, paragraph 1 and 2. And the reason I'm making that motion for the change is that the Liquor Control Commission laws are very specific now, and that has been changed because it was a problem with police officers. As the mayor fully remembers, we had a chief of police that was actually married to someone that owned a liquor license, and they kept their marriage quiet while this was going through the legislative process. And it finally did, but not before their marriage came to light. But anyway, that's now the rule, and I think that we should try to stay. When we cite state law and up and down the line, we're going to see it in the charter when we talk about that and other things, that we should stay current with the current laws.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So I just have two questions for clarification purposes. It's my understanding that Councilmember Clark, you're referencing administrative rule as opposed to state statute. Is that correct?
Whatever it is that's under, when I went to the Liquor Control Commission rules in order to hold the liquor license, whatever that falls under, that's
Okay.
where it is.
I guess my only question, and this may be where we might need to utilize our city attorney, is that if it is administrative rule as opposed to statute, where that falls in the precedence of city ordinance, must that be under administrative rule, or can that supersede administrative rule? And that's one that I'm at least unclear on. The only other thought that I had was that maybe instead of referencing specific state law or specific administrative rule, inserting a clause that said, this ordinance shall not supersede any, any public act or any, state laws or administrative rules. That could be a way to address it carte blanche as opposed to section by section. So
I would be fine. I would be fine with that too. In case you didn't know the specifics, if an officer is not married or divorced or whatever the case may be, and he marries someone that has a liquor license, that person must have been in possession of that liquor license for, I believe it's 3 years prior to them getting married, and in which case they can be married, and they don't have his spouse does not have to forfeit the liquor license.
Okay, that makes sense. I know marijuana is going through the same thing. If you can be a government employee and have a spouse that has a operator or grower license. I guess my only thing to make it a little bit less clunky is that we can actually come back before the second reading and adoption with any fixes, be it typographical or content. And so I would just ask Councilmember Clark, as the maker of the motion, if we might be able to incorporate some of those things in a second draft for the next meeting, rather than doing them one by one during this meeting. I'd certainly be open to that discussion if Councilmember Clark is.
I'm certainly fine. I'm certainly amenable to that. Like I said, I just think it's important that when we make changes like this, obviously if this document was drafted 20 years ago, we need to update. And if we're going to update one section, let's update them all and get it all current. So if we do it now, fine. If we do it as you suggest, I don't have a problem with it either way, as long as we address it.
Any other discussion? I guess my perspective is I'm completely against the change. I think that this is a good rule for a small town like Mason, that police officers don't have an interest at all in liquor establishments. To my knowledge, there's no law precluding us from having a more strict law than what the state does. And maybe that's something worth checking into. But I also believe that if we're going to really debate this is a much bigger issue than the changes that this particular proposal. It's a bigger scope than what we originally went into. That is actually changing the the content of this code versus just processes. And I have no problem having the debate about it, but I couldn't support it now. I'd need to see a lot more information. I need to know, can we be more strict? I need to know exactly, and I'm not questioning Councilmember Clark's. I know he's looked it up and read it. I'd want to think more about that language. And I'm not so sure it's appropriate to make this type of a change now in this proposal, when we could come back and make another amendment in a few weeks if it's something that everybody thought was important. But I think this is a pretty significant change. This is a fairly significant part of our ethics ordinance, that to just make it as an amendment to something that's not even related, to me, I think it needs more thought and more attention than that. And I'm not a supporter of just saying, well, if the state law says this, that's what we do. I think we should do what we want to do here in the city of Mason. And if we're allowed to be more strict in certain things, then we should be. And I believe we are allowed to be here, but maybe we're not. Maybe it's not. And that's something that should be reviewed. But I personally don't want to mix that change up with what we're trying to accomplish here, which was primarily to help the ethics board in doing their job. Any other discussion?
Well, you make the comment that, we don't have a problem with that issue in Mason, but in fact, that's where this rule change started. And it wasn't because of a bar or anything like that. It was more of a convenience store deli situation. So I just don't think that is, like I said, I think as long as we're doing this, let's do it and make it right. And if we do it by the law, then we're not hindering any of the police officers if it should arise. Not saying that it would. Odds are that it probably won't. But if it would, I would hate to think that we were so far behind the law that somebody would have to give up their livelihood or something, either the officer or the person holding the liquor license, just because we refuse to change.
Again, Leon, as you said, we were both around when this came up. And my position now is the same as it was back then. They both, the two people involved had choices. They chose to actually violate the law and keep it secret. They didn't have to get married. She could have sold the business. There were all kinds of choices, but at that time it was even state law that it wasn't allowed to happen. We chose to make it city law. And to me, I have not heard a single thing that tells me why it shouldn't still be city law, other than it's more strict than the state law. My whole point is this: I'm fully willing to discuss it and debate it and maybe hammer it out and have a little research done by the attorney. I just don't think it should be mixed up in this particular change. I think it should be done separately because it's more of a content change of the code versus a process change of the code. So I can't support the amendment, but if that's the direction the council wants to go, then that's what we'll do. Any other discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Ferris. Can't hear you, Elaine.
There, okay. Is it possible, because there were several other items that you had questioned, Councilmember Clark, to go ahead and run it through again, because you've got the ethics board and the ad hoc committee before it got to us. And I believe that this should not be a surprise when if we approve something different from the original. Do we have time to get in another meeting before the next, another review before the next meeting, so that everybody is on the same board?
Again, I think we're mixing things up. The ethics board doesn't really have much to say about the content of this code.
Okay, thank you.
They're concerned about the processes, right? The things in the code that tell them what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. But as far as the rules that they're supposed to consider when they're making their decisions, that's fully up to the council. That doesn't mean we wouldn't take some feedback from them or input if they gave it. I don't have any problem going back to it, but let's not mix it up. Let's get this done. They're really waiting for this to be done. And if we want to go back and do a review of more substantive issues in the ethics code, then let's do it. And see what we need to change, because the fact of the matter is, this is an example of a code where there's some things in here, as you noted, that are probably repeated, or at least mostly repeated from the charter or maybe state law, but there was specific reason for that. In many cases, it was to just put the information in one place, so it was easier for somebody to find. And maybe are out of step on stuff like that, but that's just my position. So is there any other discussion on the motion to amend?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ferris. All right, could we have the roll call vote on the motion to amend section 2104 D1?
Councilmember Josha,
No, but I think we should come back to it later.
Councilmember Ferris,
No,
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yes.
Looks like Councilmember Vogel is absent. Again, Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No, but I'm also willing to continue discussing.
You guys both
Council-
totally out of order, right? Just yes or no?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Whipple.
No. So as I heard it, the motion to amend failed 3-4, correct?
Yeah.
Or 3, excuse me, 3-3.
Order two.
Or excuse me, was it 2-4? 2-4, I'm sorry. 2 yeses, 4 nos. Can't count. Numbers are changing. So is there any other discussion on the motion to introduce and read for the first time ordinance 233? All right, could we have the roll call on the motion to introduce and read for the first time ordinance 233?
Councilmember Ferris,
yes,
Councilmember Schaefer,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogel still absent. Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
No.
Councilmember Josha,
Yes,
Mayor Whipple.
Yes. Did I hear 1-5 or 5-1, excuse me? 5 yeses, 1 no. So ordinance 233 is introduced and read 5-1. Next on the docket is a discussion regarding revisions to the charter. This was something put on the agenda by Councilmember Clark. So I believe it's appropriate to allow Councilmember Clark to go first. So Councilmember Clark, what would you like to say? Introduce.
I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to review the charter since the last meeting, to take a look at some of the things. And I just, like I said, I'm not going to belabor this and go through a lot of it. I can tell you that some of the things I found outside of just plain typos, which makes us look like we're pretty unprofessional. The very first chapter 1, name and boundaries, where it says the description of city boundaries in charter 1.1 is no longer accurate due to annexation. So that in itself, just the description of the boundaries of the city should be updated. And that's just one example. Then throughout this thing, contrary to what the mayor said about the other ordinances, we cite chapter and verse of state law, and at the very least, if we're going to update this thing and do it right, we should put an annex in the back, or someplace that that spells out what these state law references are, so people don't have to bounce back and forth to a state law that we don't show anybody where it is or what it is or that kind of thing. If we put it in the back of the ordinance so people could reference that, it makes it a much cleaner document. As an example, the elections the charter's been superseded by the odd year election, and you go to Michigan law for that. Anyway, that's the organization of government. There's typos throughout all of that. If you go through the administrative officers of the city, I don't even think all of them that we have now are even listed in the charter. So that's just a few. And like I said, the financial interest prohibited is an overlap for the ethics ordinance, which probably would stay. Under council in chapter 6, notifications are by, I think it was carrier pigeon and registered mail or something like that. We should update that to bring it into the 21st century with electronic notifications and those kinds of things. So I think there's a lot of things in this ordinance that need to be brought up to date. And I realize that it's a process based on what the attorney has spelled out. And it's probably not an easy process, but anything worth doing is never done easily. So that's my take. And at this point, all I'm saying is that it should at least be on our radar. We have a whole list of things to do, and this is not one of them, but it should be.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Clark, for raising the discussion. I definitely appreciated the content and also reviewing what the city attorney had previously shared. I just, for clarification, wanted to understand if it was your preference, Councilmember Clark, to go with the full revision by setting up the charter revision committee, or were there a few targeted amendments that were maybe higher priority that you would want the council to vote directly on and then put on the ballot?
No, I think my idea was that it's probably, the thing has been amended a few times over the years, but it's basically been intact since I think 1953. And I don't think a formal review has ever been done. And I think that, you know, in 60 some years, it should be done. So I would think that a general review would probably be more in order. And if we do it right, maybe it'll last us another 50 years. But I'd just as soon go through and get all the cutting and pasting that was done with ordinance changes and those kinds of things over the years, and get it all in one clean document that's been reviewed and brought up to date.
Thank you for that. And my only other question, and I'll yield the floor, is I know that it would require a twofold question on our ballot. One, to have citizens agree to revise the charter, and then two, to actually elect individuals to serve on the charter commission. Councilmember Clark, would it be your goal to have this to coincide with our municipal elections next year in 2022, or was this something, I know you said put it on our radar, I'm just trying to get an idea if we were looking to maybe hold a off year election this year to get it going, or if we would want to align, or if you were, you know, proposing that if we do move forward with this, it will align with our next regular city election, which would be next year.
Well, I think that my feeling was that once again, I think we need a lot more discussion about this. We need to have input from the city manager, the city administrator, and because there's going to be some financial things attached to this, and it's something that we need to talk about a little bit more as a council. But I would think that if we have an election coming up in 2 years, we should be able to include it at that time if we can work out all the details. I wouldn't want to try to do it any sooner than that. That's not my intent. My intent is just to get the thing somewhere on the radar and get a process in motion to where we can accomplish this particular task.
Thank you so much. That helps.
Well, my other thing too is that this just wasn't my idea. I've talked to a lot of people in the community that have referenced this document and wondered the same thing. So it's not just me.
Well, there's no question that it could be updated to at least reference reality. You know, like you said, the very first section from, I mean, this charter was adopted in 1951, so our boundaries have definitely changed dramatically since 1951. And there's a number of references to state statute that make clear that state statute trumps our charter and says something different. But I think that that's sort of a process, and not necessarily, I'm not against it. I just, as you said, Councilmember Clark, I just don't think this is one of the most important things we have to do. However, we should get it on the radar, and I almost look at this as a CIP kind of project. I mean, this is going to cost thousands of dollars to do, because somebody that's not a council member is going to have to go through this thing and really compare it to the state laws and really compare it to our current ordinances and make proposals at various levels. Certain proposals will be, hey, change this part of the charter because it conflicts with state law in this way. But there might also be a situation where it says, well, the charter and the ordinance don't coincide. Which one do you want to change? I don't think this is the normal kind of a CIP item, but it is no different than a master plan update as far as I'm concerned. So I think this should be something we should talk about as a CIP item for down the road, that we could invest the money in, pay for the legal services that would be needed to review it and come up with the changes. And I have no concerns with, personally, it seems like a good idea. I'm a big believer in having things say what we want it to say. I just don't know if it's a top priority right now, but we could certainly get it on the list. Does that seem to make sense, Councilmember Clark?
Yeah, I'd just like to elevate it a little bit more. I think that, you talk about a master plan, and I think that reviewing a almost 70-year-old document that's supposed to be the laws of the land in our city should be of equal importance. So.
And I don't disagree with you.
We need to put it on the chart somewhere.
Yep, I don't disagree with you philosophically, okay? But in reality, the fact of the matter is, you're at least I haven't heard you request any changes to the charter that would actually change the operation of the city. So that means we're going to continue to operate the way we've been, whether we change the charter or not. It's more a matter of convenience, ease of use for the public, ease of use for staff, ease of use for everybody, that we're doing this, and to try and do a sort of a gut check of sorts to say, hey, where do we stand in the frame of things? And so that's where I'm saying that we need to just get it on the CIP. And, we're going to have our CIP discussion here in the next few weeks. That's the time to decide. And quite frankly, the council is going to be the ultimate determiner what the CIP is. If the council wants to put the thing on the CIP for this year, then the council can do that. We can do whatever.
Well, I wouldn't be so quick to just dismiss changes that may affect how the city operates. We don't know if we see the Charter Commission, we don't know what they're going to unearth in this thing. I just went through some real quick down and dirty references to things that could easily be changed and updated. Who knows, when you get into the meat and potatoes of this thing as a charter commission is supposed to, who knows what they might propose? Who knows what the majority of the community thinks about it? So I wouldn't be quite so quick to dismiss the importance.
Well, then I'm going to apologize. I thought you were specifically not considered. I thought after Mayor Pro Tem Brown's question, you were not looking for the commission process. And if I misread that, that's fine. Then I'm completely against the Charter Commission. But I think this is something that either way, the Charter Commission or anything is going to be a CIP item. It's going to be a expensive item. The Charter Commission will be even more expensive, probably multiple times than just doing a review to get the charter up to date. So, I looked at this charter, this agenda item, and the first thing that ran through my mind is I recalled that the charter was written in 1951. And I know that Councilmember Vogel, if she was here, would want to reach out and strangle me for saying this, but I hope she'll take it in full perspective. What in the charter has made the city bad that we want to fix? That's the only question I would ask. So to me, that's where I am on that. But I guess unless somebody in the council wants to make a motion to do something different, I think we just the city manager is listening, and the council members will be there. And when we're talking about the CIP, but this is the kind of thing that we should probably put on the CIP and decide when we want to pursue it, and what the the actual requirements are. What is the goal? Is the goal to just update the charter, or is the goal to rewrite the charter? And I think that one could be done relatively quick, but the other is going to take a lot longer. So is there any other comment or discussion on this? Here? Did I hear somebody?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
You're up next. Anyway, my question is we are reduced revenues right now. And we have a 5-year plan already that lays out what we're expecting to spend in the next 5 years. I think I would like to have the city manager weigh in on this, the money aspect of either at the next meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Could I just piggyback on that and suggest that maybe, and it's up to the city manager, maybe she'd like to do it next meeting, but.
Well, at the CIP meeting, yes.
Exactly. At the CIP meeting, if we could have some estimate of costs to either review the charter for updates relative to outdated items, or have a charter commission. If we could have that available for the CIP. Is that more in line with what you're thinking,
Yes,
Councilmember?
thank you.
City manager, is that something you think is doable by the CIP meeting, or at least ballpark? I mean, I don't expect, personally, I don't think anybody expects hard and fast down to the nickel numbers, but can you get something together for us?
Well, the memo provided by Mr. Hitch, our city attorney Hitch, I know it's from 2015, but even at that memo, he was estimating in his memo tens of thousands of dollars to go through the charter commission. So I'm not sure. I think a lot of it has to do with what type of changes you're looking at. I mean, if you're looking at a simple amendment, a review of that and the legal implications of that are going to be much more minimal than a charter commission, which could be looking at review of all kinds of things. So it's just a hard range to know exactly those costs other than the estimates that the city attorney gave. I could reach out to some colleagues to see if they have some estimates of recent changes. But again, I think it all depends on the scope and the interest of that commission.
All right.
Administrators,
Any information you can get us will be.
can we take worst case scenario and look at it from that perspective? You know, the city attorney said tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm thinking, well, that's a pickup truck.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember DeRosa.
I just have what is probably a really dumb question, but is it possible to at least clean up typos and change the city's borders in it without having to go through a full vote and all the money incurred in that? Or is that not a possibility?
I don't understand what you're asking.
Well, if there are typos and the city's border in the first chapter is incorrect, are those corrections we can make without going through the full process?
Okay, so I'm going to do my best. Apparently we didn't all read the memo from the attorney. The charter can only be changed by amendment or a commission. And the amendment has to be approved by a vote of the people. There's a big process to get to that. I mean, it has to be, written up, approved by the council, submitted to the attorney general of the state, yada, yada, yada. But the ultimate bottom line is it's only amended two ways. The people vote to either amend a particular section of the charter, or they vote through a commission process for a whole new charter. So we can't just change anything unless we actually go through one of those processes. The other side of this that I think everybody's got to understand, I fully appreciate Councilmember Clark's concern for clarity and accuracy, if you will, in our founding document, right? The charter is like our Constitution. It's the City of Mason's Constitution. I fully get it. Something that needs to be addressed. But the fact of the matter is, if it never changes at all, it doesn't change a thing about how we're operating. And I haven't heard where we need to change any things about how we're operating. So it doesn't rise to a level of priority for me personally right now. But we haven't really talked about it much yet either. So we can't really change anything in it unless we go through either a formal amendment voted on by the people or the charter commission process, which involves a commission of people that create something that then is presented to the citizens for voting.
Thank you. That answers my question. I was just wondering if Mr. Hitch omitted anything.
No, and I went back, actually, there was a time back in the early 2000s where we did a number of charter amendments. And we had a similar review done then of things. We actually changed several items in the charter because they specifically did relate to how we acted in the city. And we wanted to get them consistent with what we actually did. And what Mr. Hitch wrote is very, very similar to what Mr. McGinty wrote back then. Is there any other discussion? City Manager Stewart, are you clear on what is expected of you? Clear as mud?
Yeah,
You're smiling.
No, I'm not clear. Because I think there's such a broad range of scope, and unless we know what our goal is with moving forward, I mean, I can definitely reach out to colleagues and see if anyone provides costs. I just worry that those costs are going to be based on the changes that they felt were necessary to their charter, which may have been amended and updated and may have been more simple or more complex depending on the community. It's also individual. I'm not sure I could get much more of an estimate than what the attorney has provided.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
at this point in time, while I agree that perhaps this is a good idea, I don't think this is the right time for this. This year, we're going to be spending a lot of money to upgrade the wastewater treatment plant, DPW, other assorted things. I don't think this is a really good time to be worrying about and taking up the city manager's time or the city attorney's time to update a document that has lasted for as long as I've been alive. And it seems to be working fine. Perhaps next year, when everything settles down a little bit, maybe that is the time that we can get some specific changes to the city charter that may need to be done. And we can take a look at it then and perhaps start the process then. Thank you.
City Manager Stewart, would you be able to just put together a placeholder for the CIP? Throw a number at it, best swag you have that would capture this issue, that at least it could be discussed at the CIP meeting, put in some place and at least satisfy Councilmember Clark's concern about getting it on the radar. Is that something that can be done? And from my perspective, I'm not talking about a great deal of detail or a great deal of research, but a swag number that would get us in the ballpark.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion then?
Mayor,
Who was that?
it's Marlon.
Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think what you suggested was exactly what I was thinking, and that at least if we discuss it at the CIP meeting, I think, it sounds like members may feel that it should be on the radar, but whether it's 1 year or 5 years is still to be debated. And so even if we don't have an exact figure, if it's on the 3-year piece of that plan or the 4-year or the 5-year, we definitely have time to research it, figure out the scope. But I certainly think that we should, look at it a little bit more in the confines of the CIP process. So I support that.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll move along. Council member reports. Does anybody have anything?
Yes.
Council member Ferris. It's actually been a while since I think you've done a series of council member reports, so I'm kind of excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, we have a cemetery board meeting set up. It's not yet, but we have it set up. And also, I just wanted to say that, the state of Michigan has done some training and free programming for seniors in the state. And I just wanted to say that I have finished my first one as an ambassador on how and where to get your vaccine in Michigan. And so I'm doing it again Monday and Wednesday next week at noon. And it's free to anybody who's over 65. So that's
Any
all.
other council member reports? I would like to inform the council of something. Today, the city of Mason lost one of our former mayors, Bob Aarons, who was mayor for a total of 14 years back in the 70s and 80s. And someone that I know Leon and I both knew, grew up in the neighborhood around him and his kids and connections with his family. He died this morning at the very young age of 96. Actually 96 and a half. I think when you get that old, they should actually put 96 in the number of days after when you make it that far. But I saw him last summer. His son, John, is a very good friend of mine, and I'm friends with all of his kids. And I saw Bob last summer, and he was doing pretty good, kicking around, but he finally lost his battle with old age today. And that's what he died of, was old age. He didn't really have much of anything wrong with him. He just stopped. And I just wanted the city of Mason to know that someone who probably gave, I think he gave 16 years of his life to city council and 14 of them as mayor back in the day, that we lost him today. And of course, I'm kind of torn. I have a huge conflict of interest. He was a good friend of mine, and his family was, but I hope anybody in Mason who knew the Aarons family will give them a little prayer and a little support. I've spoken to John, the one of the sons, and they all knew this was going to be something that was coming fairly soon. They were all fairly well prepared, but I don't think anything completely prepares you for it. But I want to let the council know, and anybody else in the city who might be paying attention, that we lost one of our old mayors today. And when you think about it, we don't really have that many. And the number of people who've served as mayor, and quite frankly, the number of people who've served as city council members in the city of Mason is not a huge number when you add it all up and you go back the 150 some years that we've been around. So I wanted to let you all know that. Are there any other council member reports?
Mayor, thanks for that information. And if you please let me know if there's any arrangements or any service or anything, I'd like to attend as well.
Oh, I will. I will, Leon. I will. I would definitely let you know.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing that news. Had I known, I would have included it in my prayer, but I think it's appropriate that just in this moment, we observe a moment of silence. So I would just ask.
Great idea. Let's give Bob Aarons and his family a moment of silence, if y'all will. I want to thank you for proposing that, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, because if you knew the family, silence was something there was a lot of. They don't really talk much. But when their buddies were around, I know when the friends were around, that was one of the things that Bob drove him nuts, is all the noise. So he would really appreciate the moment of silence, because when everybody was at the cottage they have on Lake Michigan, and it was a zoo because it was a tiny cottage and there'd be a whole bunch of people there, he usually found some little corner somewhere to listen to the Tiger game on the radio.
Mr. Mayor, isn't some of his artwork hanging in City Hall? Is it his or his son's?
Probably not, because our city manager took it all down and stuck it in a closet somewhere.
They're probably worth millions by now.
No, I don't think, I don't know as we had any Bob Aarons things. We had a couple John's things.
Was it John that did the pictures of the downtown?
Yeah,
The rain? That was John?
Yeah. The 4 owl picture, though, Bob Aarons is one of the owls that's depicted in the 4 owl picture. So now Leon and I are something like really old guys who know way too much about stuff that nobody cares about. So
if we don't preserve it, it's going to die like he did. So
yeah. Any other council member reports? City manager's report. Did you have anything you wanted to add to what's in the packet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add just a couple of things. We haven't gotten a lot of response on attending the CapCon conference. I think we only have 2 members that have signed up that I was aware of, at least earlier this morning. And so if you are interested, please let us know tomorrow morning, because we need to start planning accordingly related to that.
City manager.
Yes.
I'm one of the ones who said they would go, and I got to be honest with you. I know I'm talking to somebody who's on the board of directors for the MML. There really wasn't a lot to draw me to go. I'm dead serious. I mean, I looked through the schedule of things, and it seems to be focused on pretty much one topic. And if you're not into that topic, then I don't know, it just seemed like a pretty lame, even compared to last year when they had to kind of go the virtual way and all that. So there's just not a lot there. Anyway.
So just to be clear, Mayor Pro Tem Brown was on the board prior. I just started this month. So. Just to be clear.
Coming, Marlon? Did you hear that train?
Oh man, that bus backed right up.
I've literally been to one meeting last week.
Oh my God.
I'll just say that the constituents and residents of Mason were holding me accountable after my first council meeting. So
That's right. That's right. They were. That's right. I shouldn't even have interrupted that. Go ahead, city manager. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I did want to give an update on, I wasn't sure that we had left with a clear guidance on in-meeting versus Zoom calls. So the current order lasts until February 21st. There's still an exception on no more than two different households meeting inside. And so we still are restricted until that point. There is still no, I know one of the common questions we're getting is there is no exception in the order if you have received a vaccine as far as wearing a mask in City Hall. And so those are things that we'll continue to update as we get more information. But right now that order is in place until February 21st. That may change, but that's the current status. I also wanted to just update, we had some conversations about the jail complex and building inspection services. And with that related topic, I just wanted to be clear, obviously the jail is a very large project. When we talk about capacity for building services, you're talking about a complex that's, estimated, that whole project is estimated around $70 million. If you look at our CIP for the entire 6 years, we're at 36 million. So if you have an idea of just how large this project is for Mason and how complex it is, we appreciate Meridian being honest about their ability to do it with their current staffing. We did reach out to Delhi. They are not able to do it with their current staffing either. So we're exploring other options, and we'll update you if there's any action that council needs to take related to that. Right now, we're a little concerned with going with a third party because of some of the estimates we're getting on the costs associated with that. So the other alternative would be potentially to do state permitting. We want to make a decision as quickly as possible. And so if there is any action required of council, we may need to hold a special meeting because we don't want to hold up the process for the county as they move forward with their project. The other update I wanted to make, Councilmember Clark.
I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that Meridian begged off on this, considering some of the size of the projects they deal with. Is it because the project is too large, in their opinion, or I guess I really don't understand.
In both municipalities that we reached out to, they believe the project would require an additional staff person for almost 2 years, and so with that. It's difficult to justify adding on someone for a short-term project in a municipal setting. And so that's where they were suggesting either a third party or going through the state permitting where they can handle those larger projects and have the capacity within their staff. It's a combination of two things. You're talking about a very complex project by the nature of a jail facility, but also a very large project too. So it's a combination of both and the additional staffing that would be required to be monitoring it. I did want to update. I apologize. I don't think I closed the loop with the entire council. I know I talked with some of you individually. We were not able to secure the purchase of the property on Mason Street. So I wanted to let you know that that did go to another owner or another buyer. And so we are not pursuing that any further. We will be evaluating, hopefully in the master plan, whether that's an area we want to look at how that development, how development will be expanded or restricted in that area based on the master plan. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we do, part of the COVID issue as well, we are through most of our staff that is qualified with their second vaccine. We've been able to get them in and get them for their second appointment scheduled. And so now we're just waiting for the next layer of eligibility to open up. We anticipate that's probably going to be a little while, but when we do, that would be when our water and wastewater treatment plant operators would be eligible, as well as some of our DPW facility workers. And that's all I have.
You know anybody at Sparrow? Apparently, if you use the Andy Shore rule, you can get everybody up ahead.
No comment.
All right. Any questions for the city manager? Then we will be adjourned. Thanks for coming, everybody.